Luchasaurus, and that's Jungle Boy. If you need, check out All Elite Podcast.
We are the Lucha Brothers, and you listen All Elite Podcast. You know why?
Hey, this is Cole Cabana. Check out the All Elite Podcast. All Elite. All Elite.
This is Sammy Guevara, the best ever. And you, yes, you, need to go check out All Elite Podcast.
Myself, the man with the huge effort arms, Brian Cage. You're watching the All Elite Podcast. Who better?
Welcome back, All Elite family, to another exciting edition of the All Elite Podcast. As always, I'm your host, All Elite Andrew, and I'm joined by my boy, Big Match AJ. We are coming in off another exciting edition of Dynamite last night. How you feeling, AJ, before we jump into AEW? How are you?
Dude, I'm good. How are you? Really, I don't have too much going on. So, and you do. You have a lot going on.
Yeah, I was gonna say I have a lot going on. I'm very busy, but I'm making do with it. You know, it's not the end of the world. It's nice. It's nice to be busy sometimes. It's also nice to have a break, but you work with what you got. I've been busy, but I'm doing good. Dynamite was very exciting though last night. I've been very excited about AEW lately, getting closer to the pay-per-view. My excitement levels are pretty high, I'm not gonna lie, with the pay-per-view just a couple of weeks out, everything that they've built up to it to this point. Like, I'm feeling really good about Dynamite. I'm feeling really good about AEW. We have a lot of really cool news to talk about. I do a lot of stuff related to Dark now, so now that there's a whole nother element to Dark, I'm excited about that. So yeah, there's a lot of exciting stuff to talk about. So
a lot happened Tuesday morning.
Dude, talk about it. Let them know. Big Show got signed. What did
Wednesday
you think?
morning. Sorry, yeah.
What did you think about that?
It was crazy, man. I mean, it came out of nowhere. I felt like everybody was like, "What the fuck? Really? Okay." Like, because it's not bad or anything. It's not, like, you don't want to see them signing a bunch of old guys, but like also like it's fine. Like, it's the Big Show. He's a giant. He can do some cool stuff.
And the thing is, we recognize, and I feel like a lot of people should recognize at this point, he's not really being signed to be a major player. It's not Big Show is in the Impact Zone and is making, like, that's why I saw some people say, why are they spoiling this announcement? And it's like, well, he wasn't going to make some big surprise in an angle, so announcing him in this way kind of just makes sense. He might wrestle. He'll probably wrestle a little bit. I'm not going to be that naive to say he's not here to work at all, but he's not going to be wrestling every week. I think he will be treated as a big character, as an important character to really elevate some of the guys he goes up against, which is only smart. But he's not here to take anybody's position. He's really here to. There's a lot of positives that come from signing the Big Show outside of having another big draw. Like, the things he can teach their big talent, the things he can help showcase within AEW is the biggest thing for me.
Yeah. No, for sure. I mean, he has a wealth of knowledge, and he's been doing this for a very long time, since WCW days. He's back on TNT. That's also pretty cool. And Big Show, he's a good talent to have, and like, when he does wrestle, like you said, it's going to be big moments, and it's going to be to put other guys over, and it'll be good.
I just hope that we get the Marco Stunt versus Big Show match.
Or a tag team.
You're right. That would be fun, too. That would honestly probably be even more fun, and you could make some sense out of that and do a lot of cool stuff with Marco that you might not be able to do literally with anyone else. So that's a cool idea right there in and of itself. I'm hyped for Marco because of the Big Show. I've heard him do interviews and stuff before talking about how the Big Show is his favorite wrestler and he wants to have a match with him and stuff, and I'm sure that seemed like a really, like, far-off possibility, honestly, even if he would have been signed by WWE and that type of stuff. Like, there a lot of things would have had to fall into place for that to happen, and it feels like it's falling into place to happen, you know? Like, it very well could happen, so that's exciting. My biggest excitement of all of this is that there's another show. They're doing AEW Dark Elevation on Monday nights. That's going to be starting on March 15th at 7 p.m., and like I said, I do a couple of things with Dark. Well, mostly the writing I do for WrestleJoy, where I just read about some of the talent that are being featured on Dark that people might not be familiar with. I've done one on Nick Camarado and now one on Aaron Solo. So to see AEW putting more of an emphasis on Dark makes me excited because I've been giving it a little bit more attention. And the more I've watched it, the more I've been like, I should have been watching this a little more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, every time I watch Dark, I feel like that. Every time I watch Dark, I'm always pleasantly surprised. Like, oh, this is actually a really fun show. And the only major problem it had was it was too long. And this will fix that problem by making it 2 shows.
I hope so. I hope that they just plan on sort of splitting it into 2, giving more of the the newer, fresher guys a lot more time on Mondays on Elevation. And there's so much talent in AEW that I'm excited to see how they decide to do this. If it's going to be strictly the unsigned talent on Elevation, or if it's strictly a spot where the unsigned talent actually go on Dark and these guys are showcased on Dark Elevation. And it might be people we're not used to seeing, like Anthony Agogo and a couple other people that we know have been signed but haven't really been featured. I heard him on commentary, so I assume that they're going to be using him soon, and this makes sense. So yeah, I don't know what Dark Elevation is going to be. I will probably not call it Dark Elevation for too long. It's just going to become Elevation to me until they change Dark's name. You can't. I don't know why we have two shows named Dark, but I also understand. So I'm stoked to check that out. I can't wait for it to start on the 15th. That'll be coming a week after the pay-per-view, so that's cool.
Yeah, definitely cool.
We talked a little bit about the video games, and it's kind of funny because I was kind of being picky about them not releasing this game. AEW Casino Double or Nothing is now available on the iOS App Store. They had mentioned it in a couple weeks back, maybe a couple months back, that this game should be ready to release soon, and lo and behold, it's here. It doesn't look like anything I will be too interested in, but I'll give them credit for going into a different market, trying to do what you can in the business realm of things, but it is absolutely not for me. If you're into casino games, though, it could be perfect for you.
Yeah, I suppose.
Hey, if you like casino games and you like AEW, it kind of goes hand in hand. Not the last bit of news, but one last bit of news. We got Sting. He is fully cleared to compete, so that's nice. People were speculative on what he would be able to do, you should still be speculative on what he can do, but to see that he's cleared by a doctor, people can stop being scared about him getting power bombed. They're taking all the right precautions with Sting. They're doing the right things with Sting. And you mentioned it earlier, kind of them signing Big Show, and they're signing older talent, and how do we feel about this? I have no issue with this yet. It could become an issue, I guess, if they started, like if they just brought in Carlito and everyone that you just happen to see in the Royal Rumble and a couple other guys. Like they could make it an issue, but so far it's really not, and it's really not even close to an issue where I'm so unfazed by this, and I am one of the bigger people who would bitch about something like this. So to me, I have no issue. Maybe if he had showed up and like beat up Kenny Omega, I would be like, what the fuck?
New stars.
Yeah, like say Don Callis debuted Big Show to turn on Kenny Omega. That's some stuff that would happen in WWE or even Impact back in the day. That would have turned me off of his signing. This is just, he's going to be a commentator who does a couple matches and helps in the background way more than he's going to hurt anything, even if he were to be involved in a major way. So this is a fantastic signing, and I have no issues with it. Last bit of news worth talking about is the ratings. AEW picked up a little bit from last week's rating, up to 831,000. This comes as no surprise to me. I anticipate next week's number to be even greater, obviously with the Shaq involvement and then just leading into the pay-per-view, which is genius. Our good friend Phil, former podcast host, was kind of questioning why they would do that match in our group chat, and I had to tell him, it makes so much sense. Shaq isn't going to sell pay-per-views by being on pay-per-view. He could, though, sell pay-per-views by drawing people in to watch on TNT next week, and then they decide they want to buy the pay-per-view. So it's a very smart move. I think that they booked that Shaq thing as good as you could have with something like this. So, but the ratings are good.
Yeah, the ratings are good. And like you said, with Shaq on TNT, like that's always going to be good. So that's going to do a good rating, and I expect it to be greater next week. And even if it's around the same number,
what if it's like 1 million or even more based off of the Shaq thing? Like I don't know what to expect with the Shaq appearance, but it has been now hyped up a little bit. People know when the match is. I assume Shaq will talk about this probably all week long on his basketball post-game stuff that he does and stuff like that, just because that's how Shaq is. Like, even if he wasn't promoting it, just because he's involved in it, he's going to talk about it. So I anticipate that he will draw fans into it, and they could do a significantly bigger number just off of the draw of a talent like Shaq.
It's possible.
Yeah, not because of his talent, but because he's a superstar in just the media landscape. So. And some people were speculating that, Cody's injured. Maybe Big Show replaces him in that match. I don't think that's going to happen. It would be interesting. I don't know. Maybe Big Show and Shaq have a match now that they're in AEW, but that's not I'm not hedging my bets on that. I saw that on social media all day yesterday, so I just wanted to mention it. And it's not the worst idea. I can understand where people get it from, but I'm good. I'm good on that one. Yeah, that's all we got for news. Not a whole lot of, there is a great crazy news that we already talked about, but not a whole lot to talk about. Let's go ahead and talk about Dynamite. Dynamite was an okay show. I'm not gonna say it was the best Dynamite ever, but it wasn't bad at all. There was just a lot of. It felt really fillery to me. It made me feel funny because I was kind of promoting it like to at least to us, like, hey, this is gonna be such a great show.
You would have been right.
Yeah, that's fair, and so maybe I should be the bitter fan who's saying, why didn't you save Big Show for a surprise? But it was an okay Dynamite, and I don't want to act like we're saying it was bad at all. It was very fillery. You could feel like we're leading up to the pay-per-view, and there was good stuff to it, but the matches themselves, outside of the main event, I didn't feel like we had a lot to get excited about. Let's just talk about it. I don't want us to sound like we're having a negative episode, but that's the realistic part of it. We opened the show with Mox picking up a win over Ryan Nemeth. This should have been a short, easy squash, so I'm not mad about it. But just remember, this is the first squash of the night. Very quick and easy win. This might be a pattern throughout the night, though. Post-match, Moxley cuts a solid promo. He essentially says he's going to leave it all in the ring, even if it's the way that he goes out. So kind of alluding to to me, I took it as he thought he might die in this match. So what did you think?
That I was kind of like. I saw in the chat people being like, "Oh, he's gonna quit," and I was like, "I don't think he's saying that, but I think he's saying like it's serious." I don't know. Like, I think he's just trying to hype it up, like this is gonna be a real serious death match.
Yeah, and I agree with you, and I appreciate that from him.
Like the real deal, authentic.
The effort he made to make it a solid, believable death match. You know, like you said, like I said, he sounded like he's gonna leave it all in the ring. And obviously not real life die, but from the promo aspect, that's it. He's going into a death match. He might die, and for that, I'm hyped for it. They don't got to do much to get me hyped about this match, but this promo and Kenny's promo were both short and sweet and did enough to add that little bit of hype. But I'm kind of maxed out on hype for that match, so.
Yeah.
Backstage, Archers with Phoenix, they're asked about how their recent teaming might affect the fact that they're facing off and stuff. This didn't do a whole lot for me, honestly. I was kind of like, I don't love Archer's solo promo work. That was the only takeaway, and it wasn't bad. That was my takeaway from this. It
is weird that he's doing like a lot of his promos when you like. What's the point of Jake then?
And it's probably just like to keep Jake limited as much as possible, keep him like just socially distant from everybody, which makes sense. It's just like Archer is such a super incredible talent. So when you see him in the ring, you're like, why isn't this guy already one of the top guys? Like, how could WWE have overlooked a talent this good when he was literally signed to them at a point? And his promo work makes me understand a little bit. He's not an awful promo, but it does leave something to be desired at points.
Well, also back in WWE then, he wasn't as good as he is now.
He was still good back then, though. Like,
he was good.
He has been good.
But I feel like he learned a lot from New Japan.
You're 100% correct. I am just saying, like, how is someone so big? How was AEW able to scoop him up when he's so damn good? And again, his promo work isn't awful, but it did leave something to be desired.
I agree.
We have
I don't love him for the promos, though.
No, yeah, and that's just where segments like this don't hurt him at all for me. But I'm like, oh, this is why you have a manager. Like, it's better that way. The Bucks are backstage showing their parents the AEW trucks in the back. There's nothing to talk about here.
So fucking obvious. Like when it was happening, I was like, something bad's gonna happen to them. I know now.
Yeah, 100%. And they did something like this on Being the Elite already, so it was just kind of funny. And I saw reading a review of the show, someone was like, like they've been with AEW for so long. How have their family not seen the trucks? And
yeah,
it's a fair question. Let's jump right into the next match. Cage and Starks picking up a victory over the Varsity Blondes. This wasn't bad. It was relatively short. Again, another squash match. You didn't have you didn't have to think too hard on who was going to win this one. Match itself was all right. The post-match is what really got me excited. But that's kind of a bummer because we've been pumping up the Varsity Blondes. I still am a big fan of them. But I think that I saw it coming. They've had some solid teams to go against the last couple weeks. Cage and Starks are good, but I don't know if they're the best like Jericho and MJF. So in terms of that,
no.
And again, it wasn't bad. It's just like I've had high hopes for Varsity Blondes. So a little bit of a pullback there, but they're still great.
But they are great, and I feel like it's just one bad match to me. It doesn't make a whole world of difference.
It wasn't bad.
It wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. It was just like less than what I expected.
And I put that up to kind of us being, or me more so being like, the Varsity Blondes, they've been on a run. They've had some solid tag team matches, and they have. This one just wasn't that. Post-match, Sting comes out with a body bag. Taz thinks that it's Darby, and boy, did Taz look like an idiot when he pulled down the body bag, and it's Hook. Hook. He's sitting in the body bag. Darby comes from the rafters. He's got a skateboard in his hands. He drops Ricky Starks. He hits Ryan Cage. Sting. Jeez, I'm messing up everybody's name right now. Sting jumps in the ring and hits a Scorpion Death Drop on Brian Cage. This was fun. Did
you forget the Darby flying part?
I said he came down from the rafters with the skateboard, brother. Trust me, that was an intense moment. Little kid Andrew was like, "Yes, this is why I love Sting." Rad.
This was so cool. He came down with the skateboard. His theme music started playing. He hit him with the board. Everything was great. This was fantastic. Love this. Mm-hmm. This was just fucking cool. Nothing to complain about.
No, and this is a good We're obviously not capping off this feud, but it's a good leading into the pay-per-view. We're 1 week away. They just kind of started interacting in a way where it was almost a brawl, and that's something worth noting. We haven't seen a whole lot of those AEW brawls that we come accustomed to, so that's cool. This was a great segment though, and a great build to that match. We've mentioned it a couple times, how were they going to be able to stretch this out and still make it super entertaining? And thus far, I think they've done a great job at that.
Definitely.
Another feud they've kind of stretched out a little bit. We got Miro backstage with Kip Sabian. They're complaining about the wedding. Midway through, Miro's handed a note he's asked, will you wrestle us at Revolution? Yes, no, maybe, circle one. Miro was not pleased with this at all. He thought it was childish. He tells Charles to come home and let Miro teach him to be a man. So, yeah, it looks like we're going to get a match between these two teams. I hope it's a pre-show match. It feels kind of pre-show matchy, so... Yeah.
I don't know. I think it might be a good match, actually. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised with this one, so I wouldn't mind if it was on the main card.
I'll give you that. I just have and I like all of these guys. I like all four of the teams involved in this, so it's a solid match for the show. I just have a lot more invested in the other storylines that are going on right now.
I totally get that.
But this was fine. The next match, again, another squash. We have Jake Hager picking up a very quick win over Brandon Cutler. Pre-match, Cutler was backstage. He had his little dragon mask on. You still can't tell if that's cool or lame yet, but he's trying. Short, easy win for Hager. Didn't do a whole lot for me. Yeah.
No, same here. It was very just Hager looks good, which is what we wanted out of it, so I'm not complaining.
Yeah, exactly. And the post-match was good. Proud and Powerful hit the ring with Wardlow to attack Cutler. The Young Bucks come out and make the save, but no, they left their dad alone. And Papa Buck gets attacked by MJF and Chris Jericho. The beginning of the attack we don't even see, but he is sliced open mass transit style. This brother is getting rocked by MJF. I'm pretty sure it was just
fake blood, but...
Nah, dude, he was leaking. They cut him from top to bottom. Threw him face first into Nick Jackson. No, not enough. Throw him face first into Matt Jackson. There we go. That's enough. It was intense beatdown. I saw people all over social media. Was that real? Was that real? Of course it was real, you marks. Can you believe this? Papa Buck, he should be calling the police.
You're silly.
I loved it. I thought this was amazing, especially when when they did the Young Bucks pose. That is my all-time favorite GIF I've ever made. So
that was good. It was a fine segment. I have no issue with it.
And shout out to my boy MJF Scarf. He stole my gift, but that's still my boy. So It was a good segment. I understand the point of the match now a little bit more. It makes sense. Cutler's beat down. Everybody, the Young Bucks like her beat down. So, the Young Bucks help Papa Buck get into the ambulance. And another confusing part of all this is the Good Brothers join Nick Jackson to go to the hospital. Maybe they're really close with Papa Buck.
I love him.
Or maybe next week we get a brawl in the hospital. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe they're going to go train Papa Buck while he's in the hospital. We got some highlights for the Shaq match. We already talked about Shaq, though, so let's talk about Adam Page picking up a win over Isaiah Cassidy. This was a match, again, you didn't have to really guess who was going to win this one, but I will give him credit for this one. And you couldn't do this all night long, so it makes sense where they did it and why they did it with Cassidy. He looked great. Honestly, I felt like, in my head at least, he's elevated a little bit. I take him a little bit more serious. During the match, I'm sitting there saying, maybe nothing is wrong with Quen, and this is just an ingenious way to get a guy that we're used to being a solo or a tag team superstar to feel just more legitimate. And that makes sense. If you separate tag teams and let them get more of solid singles matches on, he didn't even have to win this one. He just looked good. So I think that this was smart. I don't think the intention actually is pull Quen off to let Cassidy get over a little bit, because Quen kind of feels like the hotter guy. But if it's not the intention, it's working out fucking great, and it's going to help the tag team overall. So
Oh yeah, and this was a good match. I kind of missed it the first time around. I rewatched it, and it was a really good match. And Hangman, like he said, really was able to make him look like $1,000,000, and I think that's the key point to take away here.
That's a great point too, and something I didn't think about because I was giving Cass a lot of credit for his involvement in the match. But Hangman Page has done a great job with a lot of these guys he's been paired up with the last couple of weeks and months. And it was something we put that pressure on him early on. I feel like in AEW where we're like, oh, can he have a good match with this guy and this guy? And they were never bad matches, but they weren't necessarily great matches. We're kind of getting those now, especially like I said here with Isaiah Cassidy. And that's not to take any credit from Cassidy though. He did a solid job. I think it's cool how it's working out. Hopefully Quen is good, but it's elevating Cassidy in my opinion.
Yeah.
Post-match, Matt Hardy comes out. He's all pissed off. He says he's going to hurt all of the Dark Order. He brings out Five. He's got a chair in his hand. So we didn't see Five get beat up either, which I'm okay with this. I'm okay with them setting the tone that we're not always going to see people get beat down. They're just going to get drugged out and already beat dead.
That makes sense to me because, like, why would there always be a camera backstage watching fights?
Yep, I like it. And him holding the chair, like, it explained to us what happened without us having to see it. Oh, my gosh, we're intelligent human beings who can put A and B together and make C. It's incredible. But yeah, he throws Five through a table. I thought that was cool. A good way to just continue this feud with these guys. Add a little bit more to it. You could see Hangman is in a position now of like, man, I wanted them to be my friends because I wanted friends, but now they're getting beat up because of me. There's a lot of elements to this too. If you watch Being the Elite, you know that Five is kind of the guy who's brought Hangman back into the fold. At one point, Five left a Valentine for Hangman, and Matt Hardy's the one who found it, ripped it all up on him. So they've done some stuff here to build it up with Five and Hangman. So when I saw Five be the one tossed, I was like, damn, that's rough, man.
And I like that they're putting that much intricacy into it.
Yes, exactly. And it's not something you have to follow. Like, you don't have to know that Five is the guy who's kind of helped facilitate a lot of this. But if you know, it gives you that much more. Better. Yeah, it makes it better, and it gives you a closer relationship to someone like Five who you might not really care about as much because of that. So, we got a decent little promo with Kenny Omega. He's with Alex Marvez. He's back there building up some deathmatch shit. So I thought it's cool.
Yeah.
I think it's a great way to build to that match. With you had Moxley do it in one way, just kind of expressing that he might die, and then you have Kenny literally building instruments of death. So.
Yeah, that was cool. I mean, Mox's promo was really serious, and this was like Frankenstein shit, and so it's great.
But it didn't feel too hokey to me. Like,
no.
It's obviously like not real, but what they're doing and what they're promoting, like, it was fucking. I've seen promos like this that feel hokey. This didn't. It felt just cool and added an element of like, yes, this is gonna be sweet when it happens. So, I seriously keep looking at my calendar throughout the day, the last couple of days, to be like, is it actually next week that the pay-per-view finally is? I'm pumped, seriously. So, and this match has done a lot of that. I'm also pumped for the women's tournament. We got Nyla picking up a victory over Britt Baker, and this was a solid match. These two have come a decent way. I don't want to say a long way because I think they still have a ways to go, and that's not to discredit them. I just think that they're going to keep getting better. But early on, they never had bad matches, but they weren't great. These are getting good. They had a solid match here. So,
like, this was a particularly good match, to the point where I even said in our chat, like, is Britt gonna win after the first beast bomb she kicked out? And I was like, I don't know what's happening. Like, it was that good, to the point where I questioned who was gonna win, because I was pretty sure that Nyla was gonna win, and I wanted Nyla to win. But when that happened, I was like, God damn, I don't know. So that's to me is the benchmark of a good match, just there, and that there was a suspension of disbelief for who was going to win, like true suspension of disbelief, and really a good match.
Yeah, and a lot of that has to do with Britt's build. You know, she's been booked really well over the last couple months and not super dominant. She's taken some losses, so this loss doesn't feel like it's hurting her momentum in any way, really. She's done well. She came up short in the tournament. Nyla looks really great continuing forward in the tournament. I imagine that, I mean, I don't even know what to think is going to come of the tournament at this point, but I feel like Nyla's going to have a strong run. I think it's a weird way to set up Nyla versus Shida 3, but it is a way to set it up with some type of build to it. But I don't know. Also, maybe someone like Yuka Sakazaki picks up her victory over Nyla. So. Yeah,
that's totally. There's a lot of avenues you could go down here. Like Ryo Mizunami could get the win over Nyla and become a monster.
They could have Ryo beat Thunder Rosa, and
Ryo could beat Thunder Rosa. Yeah,
pick up a win over Nyla. Thunder Rosa could beat Ryo. Like, there's a lot that could happen.
There's so many avenues with this tournament that I'm really excited for it.
100%. And if Nyla happens to win through all of those avenues, she's gonna look really strong coming out of it. And that's what people have to understand. Like, she might not be the strongest woman in AEW in terms of booking right now, but through this tournament, she very easily can be. So. We got a decent promo from the Jurassic Express and FTR, kind of going back and forth a little bit. It was mainly Jurassic Express at first and then FTR after. Marco sounded great in this. I think he can be a great mouthpiece for Jurassic Express, especially because Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus look great, but it's amazing how they're just not as good at talking as he is. Like, he just has a fire about him. He's fiery. So
he is. He's very passionate. He's like a little tiny dog that's like yappy.
That's a great way to explain. No, that's a great way to explain it though. Like, he's a yappy kind of dog who he might not look the biggest, but he's got a lot of bark behind his bite. So I think it was a decent promo. I have nothing bad to say about it. Obviously, FTR did a good job at their part. Setting up a 6-man tag. So I don't think that this tag team match will happen on the pay-per-view now. Makes sense. That this has been a solid television feud. I'm looking forward to Jurassic Express getting their pay-per-view feud, though. It's got to come at some point. So the main event, Archer picking up a win over Phoenix. This was a fucking solid match. My struggle with this match is I hate going into a match when the commentator is like, this could be the match of the year.
Yeah, Tony was really doing that the whole way through.
There's no title belt on the line. It's not really a pay-per-view. Like, it could be, but probably not, to be honest. Like, there's probably going to be bigger matches than this. These two could have a bigger match down the line than this. It was a fucking great match. But when that's your first thought in your head is like, oh, it's going to be match of the year. It's like, come on, bro. Don't make me discredit the match before it even begins.
Yeah, it didn't bother me as much as it bothered you, but it did bother me. I was like, Tony, really? Because, like, it wasn't just the beginning of the match. It was also, like, the middle of the match and by the end of the match. And they were still going on about how, like... And then you got other guys who jump in and be like, yeah, this could be the best. It was like, yeah, it was a good match, but it wasn't the best match that they could even have.
And here's my... And I sound a little bitter about it, so I'm glad you pointed that out, which is true. But the reason I'm a little bit more affected by it is because look at the landscape of professional wrestling this year, man. Anyone calling any match in February a potential match of the year is blind.
Yeah.
Because if you don't think that there's going to be some crossover matches that blow our mind by the end of this year, then I don't know. You must have strong conviction that the pandemic isn't even close to being over. Because unless that's your thought process, you have to recognize on the horizon there are going to be some amazing matches. We missed out on a lot last year. I think 2019 and 2018 were some great years of like almost the best wrestling and the best matches and some real crazy moments in wrestling where you were like, holy shit. I feel like we're going to play catch up this year where 2020, a lot of that couldn't happen. 2021, a lot of it will happen. So
yeah.
The match, though, the main event was great. Post-match, Archer lifts Phoenix up. They fist bumped, so they're still bros. I love that. I think that's a cool way to and they're not necessarily a team or even a stable or anything, but it's to establish like, yo, we're cool. You got my back, I got your back. We had a good match. So.
Yeah, and I love that just angle to it that like Phoenix like and Archer have some sort of relationship that's just not gone into the wind. I like that. I'm happy Lance Archer won. Again, like I said on the podcast, I feel like Phoenix should have won, but I'm not gonna complain about that too much because I was rooting for Archer, so I really have no right to complain.
It makes it kind of tough where they're probably in a position where I understand if they're not trying to necessarily like because Phoenix and Penta are brothers, and it might make it difficult to push them both in that single. Like, you want them to both be singles, but how can they both be singles if they're both in that match and people are immediately expecting them to work as a team or be more of a tag team? So until they have some type of formal split, I totally understand this style of booking where if you already have Penta in, you might not want Phoenix in, and you want a big guy who's a solid base. And Phoenix, has been on a solid roll. He's gotten so much praise that giving Penta this opportunity to kind of get that same buzz going for him makes a lot of sense to me. So when I take all of that into account, I understand why Phoenix isn't in it, but with his run and the amount of phenomenal matches he has had, it is a shame that he will not be featured on this pay-per-view. That's what I will definitely say. It is such a bummer. And yeah, there's just no real way that I could see him being featured on the pay-per-view. Even in the Battle Royal that they've announced, his tag team partner is involved in that match. So yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, it sucks. It really is a bum deal for him.
Maybe they'll let him and Pac join the tag team battle royal. I wouldn't be mad at that.
Oh yeah, you know what? You're right, actually.
So, That wraps it up. That's everything we had to talk about with Dynamite. Everything we had to talk about with the news. Despite the big news, it wasn't necessarily a long podcast because we got right through it. Anything we forgot to add, AJ?
No, I think we got all the AEW 2 show,
Yes, the
whatever.
gaming show.
It's gonna be on 45 minutes from now, so go check it out when you set a reminder on YouTube.
Cool. Yeah, they're gonna show some actual in-game footage, which is what I've been looking forward to and all that, and that makes sense why they posted or released that other casino game today. So yeah, cool. Make sure you guys go check it out. Get your updated AEW news. If you don't manage to catch it, I'm sure if there's anything interesting, we'll mention it on Tuesday's show.
Oh yeah.
We'll be back on Tuesday, talk about Dynamite leading up to the pay-per-view. Then we'll be back next Thursday to recap Dynamite and talk about the pay-per-view. Talk about all the matches on it. I'm fucking stoked. Out of 10,
I am too, man.
Out of 10, right now I'm an 8. Right now I'm an 8, but I guarantee by next week, once it's a couple days before and everything, I'm gonna be 9.5, 10. The main event, the card itself, it's not full of matches I want to see. Like top to bottom, every match isn't a match I would book, but I'm still intrigued to watch every match top to bottom that's been announced so far. So they've really pulled out all the stops in terms of the ladder match, the battle royal, the death match, there's a street fight. Like, in terms of what they've put on the card, even though a lot of my favorite wrestlers still haven't been booked, I don't know what TK is doing, but the card is still great, even though they're missing some of my favorite guys. So I'm looking forward to it.
No, me too, man. I wouldn't I'm gonna be at like a 9 minimum the few days before the pay-per-view.
So
this is gonna be an amazing show. And again, all I need is the main event, but there, like you said, every single match on this card is worth taking a look at.
And they all have stories to them, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's stuff that I'm invested in throughout it. So and I also am glad that, like, because we kind of reset at pay-per-views. We get into the next mode. We could see where they're going with stories next. Their stories go from one level to the next level. Like, so I'm excited because it's been a couple months. We're gonna get stuff a little bit more refreshing. Not that it's been boring, but it's just like that peak spot. So.
And Moose will be TNA and Impact champion, and then he'll be able to face Scani.
You couldn't help but get Moose love in here, yeah. Moose. All right, we talked. There's our Impact plug for the week. Go watch Moose become the double champion. Thank you guys for tuning in with the podcast. AJ, let them know where to find you before we get out of here.
You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at AJ
And you can find me on Instagram at Upstate Andrew, on Twitter at Instagram. You can find me on Twitter at Upstate Andrew, on Instagram at Andrew Kazir. You can find the podcast on Facebook at facebook.com/AllElitePod, youtube.com/AllElitePodcast. If you're watching us there, make sure you smash that subscribe button, brother. You can find us on Twitter at All Elite Podcast and Instagram at All Elite Pod. Until next week, see you later.
Bye.